The first thing I wrote down was paternal, but I don't know whether that's the wrong word.
Of course, I mean, it's your word, so it can never be a wrong word.
Yeah,
Just really intrigued as to why paternal came out for you when you watched that.
Because the first lad, look at my arms folded, look at that already. The first lad, I think he was giving it all the, I'm a big man, I'm a hard man, but he's just a kid. I don't know, I just feel like I want to put my arm around him and go, look, you don't need to have, for me, I don't think it's linked into the ethnicity thing, I think it's linked into the age thing. But I don't know whether I've got an unconscious bias there or not, I don't know. But for me, I almost want to put my arm around him and go, look, everything will be fine. I'm saying that from a white person's perspective and a police officer's perspective, I know. But I felt quite protective of him actually, and felt like, because when, and this is why I liked your piece of work from London, is when he smiled and the front almost melted away, you could see the real person. Maybe that's me being very, maybe that's his, and maybe that's just him and his life. And I'm looking at it through the wrong lens, but I felt very protective of him, actually. But I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just being honest about how I felt.
No, I mean, I think that's the most important thing about the piece of art, is that it generates a feeling and a response. And I think, as you said, there is a noticeable shift in the ways in which, I guess, either he is perceived or what is perceived that he projects when he had the smile on his face here in the video. But the question is, I mean, the reality is he's still the same kid, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's still the same child.
Yeah.
But there is a significant, to him at least, there is a significant difference in his experiences when he steps out wearing and expressing himself like this, which he does every time, which is wearing the clothes that he likes to wear, and as a black boy walking around. But again, whatever perceptions associated with that, in this case, definitely negative.
Yes.
But he's still that same kid on the 7th frame or the 6th frame that has the smile on his face, which, from your admittance, changes the way that you see him.
Yeah, well, it should, and I agree with you. It shouldn't do, should it?
Right.
When somebody smiles, it allows a human to interact, and I totally get the fact that a member of the community will say, "Well, you can smile whenever you want, police officer, because you're standing there with your arms folded and all your kit on, looking really stern. Actually, we don't see you as a human either." I'm a firearms commander, so I oversee lots of firearms deployments, and I'm quite strategic now, so I'm quite distanced from the firearms elements now, but I still have to oversee, scrutinise and authorise deployments. And I've been to, whether it be armed or unarmed, I've been to a number of warrants in my career, as you'd expect. And all too often you see a young child, a baby, a toddler, and for me personally at least, I've always gone, oh bless them. This is something that's going to burn in their memory and will affect how they feel about their home, their family, the police, society, forever. So again, it's that, but for the grace of God, I was lucky in that, or was I lucky? Question mark. I was lucky in that I never had to experience police officers knocking my door down and searching my home. So I'm acutely aware, as are many officers, not everyone, but as are many officers, of the impact of enforcement activity on a family as opposed to an individual. So we will be very focused on an intelligence picture or an evidence base to justify executing a warrant. If you then overlay on that, we're going to deploy armed officers. The focus on the European Convention of Human Rights and whether or not the planned deployment is proportionate, legal, appropriate and necessary is it's writ large through everything we do. But if you're a family member who might not know the intelligence picture, well, why would you, and experiences something like this, it's going to feel horrible, I've no doubt.
And I guess the question I'm asking you now is regards to, as you said, you're pretty much well versed in how the warrants work and firearms, and because what she spoke of, I think there's one hand is the intelligence that informed the warrant and the door kicking, but it's also the conduct.
I agree.
Aftercare and the process itself. So
I agree.
So the fact that 4 officers came in the middle of the night with big guns, no context, and the aftercare of them coming back and saying, okay, we got it wrong, or whatever the situation was, try to undo the damage. So it seems as though, from what you said earlier, that irrespective of whatever the care is, the process of kicking somebody's door down is never going to be pleasant, especially for kids and for children and people who are obviously far removed from that context. But then, is the responsibility also on the force to try and undo that damage, as opposed to just acknowledge that, well, accept the fact that, well, no matter what the case is, if we kick down a door, it's never going to be pleasant. Only God can change that outcome.
I absolutely agree with everything you've just said. I think it's absolutely incumbent on us as a service to, if we are going to make or take enforcement action, particularly where there is a family involved, it's absolutely imperative that we have good quality aftercare, we understand the impact of our visit, we do everything we can to mitigate and minimise the impact of that, and give everyone within that household an opportunity to continue to flourish and not affect them in an adverse way. 100%. 100%. And it's not necessarily what we do, it's how we do it. It's the same with stop search. We've had this discussion before, is actually the power might be legitimate, it might be legal, but how it's done is the problem 9 times out of 10. So we conduct many stop and search, and many of them, I'm sure, are conducted in a communicative, polite, courteous way, question mark. But actually some of them aren't, and it's the ones that aren't, I think, that have the greatest impact, although they are legal. It's the how we do it which is the challenge. It's quite interesting because this is the other card.
Defensive.
Yeah, man. So I feel defensive because I know how much I care and how much I see my colleagues care. But I think as a service, we need to be really careful of this instinctive response, because I think if we allow this emotion or this response to become the primary way of feeling, we're going to close ourselves off to trying to make it better. So I have to keep that in check, because I'm not naive enough to think that everybody cares in the service as much as I do, or as much as some of the colleagues do, or that conduct is great across the board, or that we treat everybody equally, or that we're legitimate in everything we do. So I think you'll find this in most police officers, but I think we need to guard against allowing that to be the primary reaction, because I don't think it will get us anywhere. I don't think it will help. So I do feel defensive, because I know how much I care and how much, what the difference is that we're trying to make. However, I need to put that to one side, because it isn't about me and how I feel. That's the point for me. It isn't actually about how I feel. It's about the impact of our service on the community. And you listen to all of those videos, and a number of them, most of them, talk about an interaction young in life. And that for me is that and that. So adverse childhood experience, and every contact has an impact. So I think we as a service, most police officers, I think it's the same in medical, we've talked about this again, we've talked about it in the medical profession. You become a doctor, you become desensitised to giving people bad news. You become desensitised to death, to injury, to well-being. You become desensitised because there needs to be a bit of a protection. You need to protect yourself as an individual. But I think in policing, we can become desensitised to the impact that we can have on members of the community just by speaking to them, just by looking at them, just by stopping them, searching them, executing a warrant, or whatever. And interestingly, the girl talked about, or I think one of them talked about,
having a good experience.
Correct. And for me, that's what I remember as being a PC, is going into schools and speaking to the kids, and forming strong relationships and rapport. But the challenge is, and this is where schools' environments are so important, and engaging and intervening and preventing and building those relationships in young people's lives, because if we're going to try and do the right thing further on, if the interactions have been negative, we're onto a sticky wicket straight away, I think.